I'm in a book. Or I should say, my husband Tim and I are spearheading a project in Italy, and it's featured in a book by a New York Times best-selling author, Diane Hales. The book entitled La Passione, How Italy Seduced the World will be released April 16th, and our story is told in chapter 4. You might be wondering, how and why did that happen? Sometimes I wonder that myself. I can tell you that 2 years ago, I was reading Diane Hales' first book, and maybe you've read this. It's called La Bella Lingua. And Diane was describing her, quote, love affair with Italian, the world's most enchanting language. This is what she said. Somewhere en route to fluency, I entered a parallel universe where I wore my heels higher and my necklines lower, danced barefoot under the Tuscan moon, and swim in island coves so blue that the Italians say the color twice, azzurro, azzurro. And then she wrote, Italians say that someone who acquires a new language possesses it. In my case, Italian possesses me, she says. With Italian racing like blood through my veins, I do indeed see with different eyes, hear with different ears, and drink in the world with all my senses. I could relate to all of these sentiments. This author could have easily been describing me. So I sent Diane Hales an email. I felt sure she and I were kindred spirits and that she would want to know about my mission to save an abandoned building in Italy. I was right. Appearing in a book is nothing I had ever planned or even imagined. But I could say that about most aspects of this Italian journey I'm on. Allow me to explain with a little backstory. As the daughter of an Italian mother and a military dad from Georgia, I developed a lifelong love for foreign languages. Knowing from an early age that I wanted to be a teacher, I enrolled as a freshman at the University of Georgia, majoring in French education. The year was, maybe some of you were my classmates, 1976. In UGA's Moore College, where foreign language classes were taught at that time, beautiful, inviting posters that read, "Study abroad in Cortona," were hanging everywhere. I so wanted to go and study in Italy, in Tuscany no less. However, I knew my parents were sacrificing to send their 3 kids to college, so I never mentioned my Cortona dream to them. In the blink of an eye, it seems, the year was 2010, and my eldest son, Zach, was a junior at UGA. Tim and I were happy to be able to give Zach the opportunity to study in Cortona. This meant that I could visit him there. My dream of going to Cortona was finally coming true. So off I went to Italy with my best friend and travel companion, Tracy. During our visit, one day while Zach was in class, Tracy and I made a day excursion to a neighboring town called Castiglione Fiorentino, just 10 minutes from Cortona. Author Frances Mays, who wrote Under the Tuscan Sun, which was made into a movie, once described Castiglione Fiorentino as, quote, an intact medieval village perched above the undulant Val di Chio, where groves produce optimal olive oil. Inside the walls, cart-wide streets lead to one of those balcony of the world loggia designed by Vasari. I instantly fell in love with this enchanting medieval hill town, which we affectionately call CF, instead of Castiglione Fiorentino because it's a mouthful. CF for short. 1 year later, in 2011, Tim and I bought a modest little 600-year-old apartment in the town center on one of those cart-wide streets that Frances Mays was describing. On this little pedestrian-only lane, 2 doors down, that's our little table there, by the way. 2 doors down from our apartment sits San Filipino, a crumbling stone building that has been abandoned and off limits to the public for more than 50 years. Too dilapidated and dangerous to enter. Tim and I learned from our CF neighbors that in the 16 and 1700s, San Filipino was an active church, more precisely an oratory. The priests lived and worked in the community, and they resided in the apartments located above and behind the chapel. This is the part of the San Filipino complex that gives out onto our street. We were also told that San Filipino was actually one of the first oratories established in Tuscany. But since it had been closed for so many years, no one could tell us what was inside. For 3 years, Tim and I would ask our neighbors if or when someone was going to do something to save this building so rich in history. We heard crisi, economic crisis, niente soldi, no money. Church's responsibility, the local government should fix it. Nothing was happening. One sunny day, while walking past San Filipino, I just knew that the person to save the chapel was me. And by default, my wonderful husband, Tim. I'd like to pause for a moment here to say that each time I tell the San Filipino story, it's at this point that I search for the right verb, but it never quite comes to me. People have offered suggestions. Epiphany, divine intervention, you were chosen. Oh no, I say. I'm Catholic, yes, but I'm not religious. No, it's something else, something intangible, but real. It's a feeling. The feeling you get when you're in Italy, that place where extraordinary things have tended to happen to ordinary people like us for the last 1,000 years. So back to the story. What happened next? First of all, it did actually take some convincing to get Tim on board with my idea. Extensive research had to be done on San Filipino and the Oratorians. San Filipino is named after its patron saint, Philip Neri. Filipino means the little Philip, or more precisely, in the context of the town of Castiglione Fiorentino, it means the smaller church among the 2 churches in town dedicated to Saint Philip Neri. Neri is known as the happy saint and the joyous saint. He's famous for his sense of humor and for his humility. He's also famous for his maxims. 2 of my favorite are, be good if you can, and if you wish to go to extremes, let it be in sweetness, patience, humility, and charity. Neri became a saint for many reasons, but mostly because he was among a handful of counter-Reformation priests in the 1500s who were successful in refocusing the Catholic Church on the needs and aspirations of ordinary folk. He rejected the gilded, corrupt hierarchy of the church in his day and instead embraced layperson leadership and the arts and education and empowerment for all. He commingled musical performances, public lectures, and charitable projects with daily masses, daily communion, and liturgical life. Neri's beliefs and teachings are still followed today by the Oratorians, a religious order that he founded. Little San Filipino Chapel in CF was once a thriving church and community center where priests and lay people and artists and scholars and all the townspeople from all walks of life lived and worked and came together to pray, laugh, and have fun, to grow spiritually, and to serve the underprivileged. After learning that St. Philip Neri is someone we would have liked to know and hang out with, Tim was all in. The next step was a coffee with Giuseppe Alpini, a local historian in Castiglione Fiorentino. Bellissima idea, he said, giving us the green light on our restoration idea. Next, a chat with the parish priest. Then a meeting with the owner of the building, the very happy and grateful Archbishop Riccardo Fontana in nearby Arezzo. Please note that this journey takes place in Italy. So, these aforementioned steps took months to execute. Soon after the meeting with Archbishop, though, Tim and I were in the chapel. We were blown away. Hidden inside were an ancient 15th century wooden coffered ceiling of stunning cobalt blue and gold, believed to be the oldest in the town. Intact frescoes, a gorgeous hand-painted wooden balcony that you can see comprising the choir, and exquisite cherub sculptures that are some of the finest examples of Baroque art in Tuscany. Decades of neglect have obviously taken their toll on San Filippino. The damage caused by the leaky roof and the large amounts of pigeon excrement is heart-wrenching. Nonetheless, the chapel is still breathtaking, and we've arrived just in the nick of time to save it. I'll pause now so that you can watch a short 2-minute video of the chapel. The music you'll hear is by a 16th century composer named Giovanni Pierluigi da Palestrina. Palestrina was a good friend of Philip Neri and actually composed music specifically for the masses that Neri performed. So this version of Kyrie that you'll hear could have very well been sung in San Filippino Chapel. Inside the chapel, Tim and I returned to our home in Nashville, Tennessee, and got busy. We created a 501c3 nonprofit called Friends of San Filippino and have been working to raise funds to save and restore the chapel.
Sorry.
That's okay. Extraordinary things have indeed started happening since that moment on that bright summer day 4 years ago. For example, the townspeople, very few of whom knew that San Filippino even existed, have created a sister organization called Amici di San Filippino. Local CF businesses and professionals have donated services and products. Local artists have donated artwork. In the U.S., the most respected Italian-American organizations have published stories about our project. And high school students in CF formed a group to translate these articles into Italian. Local media outlets in Tuscany, as well as the Florentine newspaper in Florence, have featured our story. Along the way, in the midst of all this incredible support from new friends and old on both sides of the Atlantic, we were really taken aback by the generosity of a special group of total strangers who sought us out. These strangers are all now friends, and they make up what we call our supporting artists. We now have 4 acclaimed supporting artists, painters and sculptors, who are all alums of the UGA Cortona Study Abroad program. Makes perfect sense. Stan Mullins, John Cleveland, Aaron McIntosh, and Alan Campbell. Each one of these artists separately told us that the Cortona experience changed their life, and each one on their own accord offered to help. All of our supporting artists have donated works to benefit our mission. These works include the following: Santa Margherita da Cortona by Stan Mullins, Cortona Landscape by John Cleveland, Cherubs in Blue and Green by Aaron McIntosh, and Santa Maria al Calcinaio by Alan Campbell. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the UGA Cortona Study Abroad program. Participating in the celebration is a successful startup in Athens, Georgia called A Very Good Puzzle Company. The owners of the company, Brian and Paige Dixon, recently learned about our project and have offered to create a puzzle from Alan's Santa Maria al Calcinaio. They are donating all the proceeds from the sale of this puzzle to Friends of San Filipino. We are delighted to accept that offer. It has been heartening and encouraging, to say the least, to receive so many acts of kindness, donations, prayers, and words of support from caring individuals who have read or heard the story of San Filipino. Our previously unknown chapel has moved from darkness back into the light. It is no longer unknown. San Filipino's newfound prominence is in large part thanks to individuals like the UGA artists, like Paige and Brian Dixon, like all the volunteers in CF and in the US who've come forward on their own to help us with our mission. Another example of individuals stepping up to help is our CF neighbor, Rosalba Peppi, who could think of nothing she'd like to do less than speak in front of a rolling video camera. But she did it because she told me that after seeing all the work I was doing to help her town, she wanted to help me. Rosalba lives right next door to San Filipino Chapel.
Rosalba Peppi, sono nata a Castiglio Fiorentino e qui ho scelto di vivere. Mi piace vivere qui, camminare ogni giorno per i vicoli del paese, toccare le pietre che tante persone hanno toccato prima di me. Questo dà valore alla mia vita dei miei figli e dei miei nipoti. Credo che sia così. È un valore importante abitare queste pietre antiche. E la fortuna mia e della mia famiglia è quella di abitare vicino a questa chiesa così antica, così bella, che ho conosciuto da poco in realtà. La conoscevo di fuori, vedevo dalla finestra del mio tetto il piccolo campanile, ma dentro non c'era mai stata perché è sempre stata chiusa. Da un po' di tempo è arrivata Rita qui nel nostro vicolo, è diventata subito una di noi. E è arrivata Rita con la sua curiosità per questi vecchi muri, ha cominciato a guardare tra le fessure delle porte di questa chiesa e ha visto che cosa c'era dentro. E allora ha cominciato a muoversi, a riaprirla. Noi che non l'avevamo mai vista, ci ha coinvolte nella sua curiosità e nel suo progetto di recupero. E così queste porte di San Filippino si sono aperte. Abbiamo visto che belli stucchi ci sono dentro, questi stucchi così polverosi che erano addormentati prima, adesso si sono come risvegliati, hanno visto una speranza prendere vita.
And then there's Professor Giuseppe Alpini. Giuseppe is the first person we consulted for advice over coffee and joined us for our first meeting with the Archbishop. As mentioned, Giuseppe is a historian. He is also the former mayor of the town. He began this journey with us, and he has remained our most loyal supporter.
Interessante mettere in evidenza il fatto che la presenza dello spirito di San Filippo Neri a Castel Fiorentino ha portato una ventata di rinnovamento in questa comunità. In modo particolare siamo nel periodo dopo la riforma protestante e quindi c'è bisogno di rinnovamento all'interno della Chiesa. San Filippo capì benissimo quello che c'era bisogno e alleggerì praticamente l'insegnamento religioso con un nuovo metodo, il metodo dell'allegria, della gioia. Gli oratori servivano per attirare non soltanto i giovani ma anche le persone di una certa età, perché alternavano momenti di divertimento a momenti di riflessione. Ecco che gli oratori furono importanti e storicamente sappiamo che questo oratorio fu dei primi in Toscana. E anche se sono convinto che tutto passa nella vita, perché ogni cosa nasce, cresce, si sviluppa con muore, però se possiamo far sì che quello che è valido anche per le generazioni future da trasmettere e che venga conservato. Quindi io sono pienamente d'accordo che se è possibile salvare questo edificio è una cosa importantissima, ma non soltanto per i castiglionesi, non soltanto per la Toscana, ma anche a livello mondiale, perché ogni goccia fa il mare.
So that expression was ogni goccia fa il mare. Every drop makes the sea. I love that. As you can probably see now, Tim and I have lived some beautiful, breathtaking moments thanks to this project. For me personally, the most magical thing happened just in this last December. At that time, I learned that the local middle school was inspired by our initiative and has created a multidisciplinary project of their own. CF middle school students this semester are learning about their town's cultural patrimony and are studying all 12 churches located within their town walls, San Filipino included. The project is called A Due Passi, Only Steps Away, Discovering Nearby Treasures. San Filipino is literally just a few steps from the middle school. I was in CF in December, and it was my dream come true to introduce the students to San Filipino as part of the initiative's kickoff. Giuseppe Alpini, whom you just saw, was there too. Our most recent exciting news is that San Filipino will soon be getting a new roof. the deterioration of the hidden gems inside will stop. We plan to begin work this year, late spring, early summer. So, what happens to San Filipino once it's fully restored? Thankfully, the church is still consecrated, which means it will be the perfect place for destination weddings. We also envision other special events taking place in San Filipino, like communions and baptisms. This activity will be a much-needed economic spark that will revitalize Castiglione Fiorentino's struggling historic town center. This is a photo of Mara Chierici and Sante Giustino, their wedding in San Filipino in 1947. To our knowledge, this wedding was the last ceremony held in this chapel. Mara is 93 now. I saw her walking around the town doing her shopping. She's very vibrant, and she's overwhelmed with gratitude for our efforts to save this place that is so special to her. And those apartments that used to house the oratory and priests, once they're restored, they will house historians, writers, artists, clergy, tourists, and pilgrims of all kinds. The rental income generated from these apartments will finance the maintenance of the building and keep the doors of the church open. We've got lots more work to do to make all this possible, but we are on our way. But again, why in the world is our story appearing in Diane Hale's upcoming book, La Passione? It is literally at this point in writing this presentation or typing it that I stopped writing, and I thought, I've never asked Diane why I'm in La Passione. So I asked her. I wrote her an email and asked her. Rather than paraphrase her response, I thought it would be more appropriate because, first of all, I love Diane's writing, and also because, well, you'll see. I think it's more appropriate just to read you verbatim what she wrote. Perhaps because it confirms what I already thought, that we truly are kindred spirits. So this is the response she emailed me back. One of the things that makes La Passione Italiana unique and compelling is that it inspires people, otherwise ordinary men and women, not just creative geniuses, to take action and transform a vision or dream into a reality. And this doesn't happen just in Italy or just to Italians. In my research, I met several people working very hard to restore a work of art or a historic building. But what struck me about Rita was the single-minded passion burning inside her. Like many other passion-struck souls, she had an epiphany. One day, as she puts it, I realized that the person to save San Filipino was me. Rita had never attempted anything like it. She didn't have wealth or resources, powerful allies, or legions of supporters. Initially, she confronted doubters, skeptics, and naysayers, yet she never wavered. Rita possessed, or was possessed by, la passione vera, true passion. I've seen something similar in chefs, winemakers, artisans, film directors, but Rita was a tad different. Her passione carries a true grace note. Like Rita, I grew up Catholic but had never heard of St. Philip Neri. When she wrote to me about San Filipino, I researched his background. And although there are many saints I admire, he's the first to make me smile. And if I ever get to heaven, he's the one I would want to hang with. Or whatever the celestial equivalent might be. I sensed his joy in serving God, in singing in churches, in reveling in the miracles of daily living, and I immediately wanted to share it with the readers of my book. St. Philip Neri and Rita touched me with their passione, and I am grateful that they did. I'm humbled and grateful for these kind words from Diane. She's being too generous. But she's right in that I have been gripped by a passion that has taken me out of my comfort zone and enriched my life in 1,000 different ways. Because of this project, I have met many wonderful people who have inspired me and sustained me. Because of this project, I am here tonight, speaking to you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. I hope that my story and this project inspire you to discover something that you are personally passionate about. Part of our mission is to develop a template for other people to follow. Is there a special place somewhere in Italy or anywhere else in the world that you think needs saving? If so, maybe you should be the person to save that special place. If you make that decision and you'd like to pick our brains about how best to go about it, we welcome your inquiry. We'd love to help you. So that's it. I'll stop here. I'm going to invite my husband Tim to join me, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about anything I've said tonight or anything related to our project. Thank you.